Millionaire marries a girl in a coma for grandfather's will. What happened next stunned everyone. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The day Ethan Hale stood in the quiet marble hallway of St. Augustine Hospital, everything smelled like antiseptic and old grief. His grandfather's funeral had ended just hours earlier, and now the family lawyer had dragged him here with a manila folder that felt heavier than any corporate report Ethan had ever signed. He wasn't prepared for the words that would follow. Your grandfather's final clause is unusual, the lawyer whispered, glancing at the half-open door of a private room. To inherit the Hale estate and retain full control of the company, you must marry the young woman he named as beneficiary. Ethan almost laughed. Almost. A beneficiary? Grandpa never mentioned anyone. The lawyer swallowed. Her name is Lila Carter. She's 24. She was involved in a severe accident 3 weeks ago. She's in a coma. The world seemed to tilt for a moment. Ethan stepped toward the door before he even realized it, pushed it gently, and froze. There she was, a girl he had never seen before, lying impossibly still under soft white sheets, sunlight from the window washing over her pale cheeks like she was carved from porcelain. Machines hummed beside her, ticking away time she could not feel. Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. You're telling me my grandfather wanted me to marry a stranger who can't even say I do? Not wanted. The lawyer corrected softly. He insisted. He paid for her care, arranged every detail. He said she saved his life once, and he wanted to return the favor. Ethan blinked, staring at the frail rise and fall of her chest. Saved his life? When? How? The lawyer opened the folder and slid out a document. Marriage license paperwork already filled out, only missing signatures. Ethan's breath caught. This wasn't a request. This was a dying man's final command. And outside, that hospital room, the board of Hale Industries was already circling like vultures. If Ethan didn't fulfill the will, the company would fall into the hands of his power-hungry uncle, a man capable of firing thousands without blinking. His grandfather had known that. He had planned for that. And somehow, the girl in the bed was part of that plan. Ethan stepped closer, quietly absorbing the details of her face. The faint freckles, the soft lashes, the sketchbook resting on the bedside table, its cover scratched and water-stained as if pulled from an accident scene. He touched it gently without opening it, feeling a strange tug in his chest. What happened to you? He whispered. She didn't answer. Couldn't. But something about her presence made the noisy world outside fall still. The lawyer cleared his throat. If you refuse, the estate transfers to your uncle. The board has already prepared transition documents. They want an answer tonight. Ethan shut his eyes for a long moment. His grandfather's voice echoed in his mind. Family isn't blood, Ethan. It's responsibility. When he opened his eyes again, they were steady. Prepare the paperwork, he said. I'll do it. He didn't say it for love, or destiny, or anything romantic. He said it because it was the only way to protect everything his grandfather built, and because walking away from the girl in the bed felt wrong in a way he couldn't explain. As the pen touched the dotted line and the ink sank into the fibers of the paper, a quiet promise formed inside him. One he never spoke aloud. I don't know who you are, but I won't let anything happen to you. And somewhere behind those closed eyelids, deep beneath the silent surface of sleep, Lila's fingers twitched, so small, so faint. No one saw it. Not yet. But it was the very first sign that nothing about this marriage would go the way Ethan expected. The hospital's hallway lights buzzed softly as Ethan returned the next morning, his tie loosened, his eyes shadowed from a night without sleep. News of his sudden marriage had already leaked to the family board, and by sunrise he had received 3 calls from his uncle, 2 from the press, and 1 from the attorney warning him that the opposition was moving fast. But strangely, the louder the outside world became, the quieter he felt when he stepped into Lila's room. The machines hummed in their steady rhythm, a soft electronic heartbeat filling the air. Lila lay exactly as he left her, peaceful, untouched by the chaos swirling beyond those 4 walls. Ethan set a fresh bouquet of lilies on the bedside table, next to her damaged sketchbook. The cover was still scarred, but he had gently wiped away the dried dirt from its edges the night before. He did not know why, but preserving it felt important, like honoring something she had lost. He lowered himself into the chair beside her bed. "Good morning, Lila," he said quietly, unsure if it mattered, but feeling compelled anyway. "I guess we are married now." Strange sentence, right? Silence answered him. He let out a slow breath. He was not here for answers. He had made a promise, even if she would never hear it. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Myers entered, flipping through Lila's updated chart. "Her vitals are stable," the doctor said. "There are no signs of neurological deterioration." "That is a good thing." Ethan nodded, eyes fixed on her still form. "Do you think she has any chance of waking up?" Dr. Myers hesitated. "Coma recovery is unpredictable. Some patients wake in days. Others take months. Some do not wake at all. But her brain scans show activity. That is promising." Ethan swallowed. Promising. It was the first hopeful word he had heard in days. After the doctor left, he reached out and lightly touched the edge of the sketchbook, pulling it closer. Curiosity tugged at him, but he hesitated before opening it. It felt too personal, too sacred. Finally, he let the cover fall open. Inside were pencil drawings, dozens of them. People in parks, women laughing in cafes, old men playing chess, faces full of emotion and life. She captured moments the way some people breathed. On the last page, a half-finished drawing showed an elderly man feeding birds by a lake. The lines were soft, full of affection. Ethan froze. It was his grandfather. Younger, lighter, smiling at birds like they were old friends. He whispered, "You knew him." Another knock came, sharper this time. His uncle barged in, jaw tight, suit immaculate as always. "Ethan, what have you done?" Ethan straightened, the sketchbook closing with a soft thud. "I honored grandfather's will. By marrying a woman who cannot speak, cannot consent, and may never wake up," his uncle snapped. "The board thinks you have lost your mind." Ethan stood, meeting his uncle's glare head-on. "The board will accept it. The will is legally binding. For now," his uncle hissed. "But if she dies, the clause becomes void. And I will take everything." Ethan's jaw tightened. "She will not die." His uncle stepped closer. "You cannot save everyone, Ethan. Especially not her." Something cold shifted in Ethan's chest. "Watch me." His uncle turned sharply and exited the room, the echo of his expensive shoes fading down the hall. When Ethan sat again, his hand brushed against something near the side of the bed. A small silver bracelet, bent slightly out of shape, lay tangled with her blanket. He picked it up gently. Engraved on the inside were the words, "For your art, chase the light." Ethan whispered, "Who told you that?" As he placed the bracelet beside her sketchbook, Lila's finger twitched again. This time, Ethan saw it. He leaned forward, breath held, heart pounding. "Lila, can you hear me?" There was no response. The machines continued their steady hum. But Ethan knew what he saw. And for the first time since this impossible marriage began, hope flickered like a match in the dark. That tiny movement haunted Ethan for the rest of the day. He replayed it in his mind as he sat through meetings, answered emails, and fielded panic calls from board members who seemed more afraid of losing their grip on power than anything happening to his new wife. By sunset, Ethan found himself back at St. Augustine Hospital, pushed there by a pull he could not explain. He stepped into Lila's room just as the last streaks of daylight slipped behind the city skyline. The room felt warmer than usual, almost as if her presence changed the air itself. Ethan gently set a cup of untouched coffee on the table, lowered himself into the chair beside her, and watched her closely. "I saw you move," he whispered. "I know I did. Maybe it was small. Maybe it was nothing. But it meant something to me." The machines kept their steady rhythm, soft and constant. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. He was tired of the noise outside these walls. Here, beside her, everything felt simple. Complicated, yes, but simple in the way that mattered. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, running a hand through his hair. "I found your bracelet today, and your drawing of my grandfather. You two were connected somehow. I want to know how. I want to know everything about you." He almost laughed at the confession. He was talking to a woman who could not hear him. Or maybe she could. He had read once that coma patients could sometimes sense voices, touch, presence. Maybe she felt his. Maybe that twitch of her finger was more than muscle memory. He reached out and lightly brushed the back of her hand with his fingertips, careful, respectful, not expecting anything to happen. But in that quiet moment, Lila's monitor beeped in a slightly quicker rhythm, just for a heartbeat. Ethan froze. "Lila, is that you?" The rhythm steadied again, going back to normal. He let out a shaky breath. He wanted to believe it. Before he could say another word, a voice came from the doorway. "You should not be here so late." Ethan turned quickly. A nurse stood holding a clipboard, her expression soft but firm. "Visiting hours are over, Mr. Hale." "I know," he said, rising to his feet. "I just noticed some movement earlier." "Has anyone checked her scans again?" The nurse's eyebrows lifted. "Movement? That is a good sign. But these things are unpredictable. I will make a note for the night staff." As she left, Ethan lingered by the bed, drinking in the stillness one more time before forcing himself to leave. Outside the room, the hallway felt colder. He walked toward the elevator, but halfway there his phone rang again. This time he recognized the caller ID and answered. "What is it?" he muttered. "You need to come to the office now," the attorney said. "There has been a development." Ethan arrived at Hale Industries 30 minutes later, greeted by tension so thick it felt like smoke in the air. The attorney stood waiting in the conference room, an open laptop in front of him. "Ethan," he said, turning the screen. "You need to see this." It was footage from the hospital's security feed. A man in scrubs, head down, face partially covered, entered Lila's room the previous night. Not to clean, not to check vitals. He moved to the machines with deliberate, practiced motions. Ethan felt ice crawl up his spine. He was adjusting her monitors, the attorney said. "But look, he changed the settings without logging anything. Why would someone do that?" Ethan whispered, his jaw tightening. The attorney hesitated. If those settings had stayed altered, her condition could have worsened. Ethan's hands curled into fists. "So someone is trying to harm her. Or trying to ensure she never wakes up," the attorney said quietly. Ethan felt something dark ignite inside him. First his grandfather. Now her. Do we know who he is? Not yet. But we pulled the badge record. The identification he used belongs to a nurse who has been on leave for 2 weeks. Ethan's eyes sharpened. This was no mistake. This was intentional. Someone had entered her room with a purpose. Someone who wanted her silenced forever. And Ethan knew exactly who had the most to gain if Lila never opened her eyes. His uncle. As he drove back to the hospital, the city lights streaked across the windshield like sharp lines of fire. "Lila," he whispered, gripping the steering wheel. "I promised I would protect you, and I do not break my promises." When he reached her room, he sat again beside her, breath steadying as he looked at her peaceful face. "If you can hear me," he murmured, "I need you to hold on. We are not finished. Not yet." And as if responding to his vow, her finger twitched again, small, soft, but unmistakably real. The next morning, Ethan was already in Lila's room before the sun touched the windows. He had barely slept at all, but the exhaustion only sharpened his focus. Someone had tried to harm her, and he refused to let that happen again. He stood beside her bed, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest, and for a moment the weight of everything pressed down on him. The company, the will, the marriage, the attack, the questions. But then he remembered the way her finger had twitched, not once but twice, and something inside him steadied. She was still fighting. He would fight with her. He pulled a chair close and Saturday morning, "Lila. I know you cannot answer me yet, but I need you to know something. Someone tried to hurt you, but I will not let anyone near you again. I promise." As if responding, one of the monitors gave a soft beep, not irregular, but just enough to make him look at her again. His voice softened. "I hope that is you telling me you heard that." Before he could say more, a gentle knock came at the door. A woman in her early 50s stepped in, wearing a blue cardigan and carrying a folder pressed tight against her chest. Her eyes were warm but troubled. "Mr. Hale?" Ethan stood politely. "Yes. Can I help you?" She took a steadying breath. "My name is Marion Lewis. I am a social worker assigned to Lila's case. I saw the update that she has a husband now." Ethan nodded, bracing himself for judgment. "Yes. It was part of my grandfather's will. Complicated situation." Marion nodded slowly. Most of Lila's life was complicated. That made Ethan pause. "You knew her?" Marion stepped closer to the bed, her gaze softening as she looked at the unconscious girl. "She grew up in one of our community programs. Very talented. very hopeful. But she had no close family, no support system. She was working 3 jobs when the accident happened. Ethan blinked, absorbing each piece like a blow. 3 jobs. Marion nodded. As a barista, a part-time art instructor, and nights at a small diner. She never complained. She saved every dollar to open a low-cost art studio for underprivileged youth. She looked up at Ethan. Your grandfather funded the scholarship program she attended. But she never knew it was him. He liked doing things quietly. A knot tightened in Ethan's chest. She drew him. He whispered, remembering the sketch of his grandfather by the lake. She must have met him somehow. Marion hesitated. She did. I remember that day. He visited the community center to deliver supplies. They talked for maybe 10 minutes. But she told me later he was the first person who encouraged her art without pity. She valued that deeply. Ethan exhaled, shaken by how intertwined their lives already were without him knowing. Marion's gaze sharpened slightly. That is why I am here. Someone called me last night, claiming a man in your family is interfering with her case. Do you know anything about that? Ethan felt heat crawl up his spine. I have suspicions. Nothing solid yet. Marion nodded. Be careful. When people feel threatened by a powerless woman, they act boldly. Lila deserves better. After she left, Ethan sank back into the chair, her words echoing. Powerless woman. Lila was anything but powerless. Even in a coma, she was pulling truths out of people he barely trusted. He reached for her bracelet again, feeling the engraved words with his thumb. Chase the light, he murmured. I will make sure you get that chance. His phone buzzed on the table. This time he checked it. A message from the hospital security office. We identified the man in the footage. Please come immediately. Ethan kissed his teeth, grabbed his jacket, and leaned close to Lila. I will be right back. I will not be far. As he left her room and moved down the hallway, he felt eyes on him. He turned sharply but saw no one, only the shifting reflection of fluorescent lights on metal cabinets. When he reached the security office, 2 guards were waiting. One slid a printed photo across the desk. We pulled the facial recognition from another camera. This is the man who entered her room. Ethan's breath went cold. The face staring back at him was one he recognized instantly. His uncle's personal assistant. The guard cleared his throat. He did not come alone. We have footage showing him meeting with someone in the parking garage afterward. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. Who? The guard clicked a button, revealing a second image. His uncle, standing in the shadows, speaking quietly, watching the hospital entrance like a man guarding a secret he could not afford to let escape. Ethan stared at the image until the edges blurred. He tried to kill her, he whispered. He wanted the inheritance back. He wanted control. His voice hardened, sharpened by a resolve he could no longer ignore. Not anymore. Ethan turned and walked out of the security office, the photo still burning in his mind. As he approached Lila's room again, the hall lights flickered faintly, and a chill swept the corridor. But when he stepped inside, something made him stop short. Her hand had moved. Not a twitch this time. It rested a full inch away from where it had been. And Ethan whispered, Lila, please wake up. I need you more than ever now. For a long moment, Ethan simply stared at Lila's hand, his breath lodged somewhere between disbelief and hope. It was not a twitch this time, and not a trick of hospital shadows. Her hand had moved, inching toward the edge of the blanket as though she had been reaching for something in her sleep. Or for someone. Lila, he whispered, stepping closer. If you can't hear me, keep fighting. I am right here. The machines remained steady, the soft mechanical pulse filling the room. But something felt different now, as if her presence was shifting, stirring beneath the surface. Ethan sat again, pulling the chair as close as possible, refusing to take his eyes off her. He knew she could not speak, could not open her eyes yet. But the change was undeniable. I found proof, he murmured, his voice rough. Proof that someone tried to hurt you. Proof of who is behind this. And I promise, I will not let them touch you again. His phone buzzed, but he ignored it. The only thing that mattered in that moment was the girl lying in front of him, the one his grandfather had trusted, the one who had somehow woven herself into his life despite never saying a single word. He rested his elbows on his knees and spoke softly, almost like a confession. I know you did not choose this marriage. Neither did I. But I want you to know something. I will honor every part of this. I will protect you, even if you never wake up. You deserve safety. You deserve a chance. For a moment, The room stayed still. Then the heart monitor's rhythm shifted, just slightly, as if answering him. Before Ethan could lean in, the door opened and Dr. Myers entered with two nurses, flipping through a fresh set of charts. "Mr. Hale," the doctor said, brows furrowed, "we reviewed last night's footage and the equipment logs. You were right. Someone tampered with her settings." Ethan straightened. "I already know who it was." Dr. Myers studied him for a moment. "Then you also understand how dangerous this situation is. If she had not been stabilized sooner, her condition could have deteriorated severely. You arriving when you did likely saved her life." Ethan felt the weight of that settle onto him. He looked at Lila again, realizing that even in her silent state, she had pulled him into a battle he had never expected to fight. Dr. Myers continued, "There is another thing. Her muscle response is increasing. The movement you saw is not random. It could be voluntary." Ethan's pulse kicked. "So she is waking up?" "She is trying to," the doctor replied. "But recovery is fragile. Any additional stress, physical or emotional, could slow her progress." The doctor gave him a pointed look, the kind that carried both warning and compassion. "Make sure she feels safe. That is the best thing you can give her right now." After they left, Ethan moved closer to the bed, gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her forehead. "Safe," he whispered. "I can do that. I will do that." He sat with her for another hour until his phone vibrated again. This time it was a text from the attorney. "Urgent. The board has called an emergency meeting. Your uncle is pushing a motion to declare you unfit." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, letting the frustration pulse through him before he exhaled it away. Of course his uncle would strike now, when Ethan was distracted, vulnerable, and away from the company. He leaned toward Lila and whispered, "I have to go for a little while. They are trying to take everything from us. But I will come back. I promise." He placed her bracelet beside her hand so she could touch it if she moved again, then stood. As he walked toward the door, the heart monitor gave a faint uptick. Ethan turned sharply. Lila's fingers flexed, slow but intentional, curling weakly toward the bracelet. His chest tightened. "You are waking up," he breathed, a mixture of awe and fierce protectiveness flooding him. "Keep holding on." He stepped out of the room, closing the door with care, unaware that the moment he did, Lila's eyelids fluttered. Just once, soft as a breath, but unmistakably real. The boardroom at Hale Industries was already boiling when Ethan stepped inside. The long glass table reflected the harsh overhead lights, and every executive in the room looked ready to pounce. His uncle, immaculate as always in a gray suit and an expression carved from stone, stood at the head of the table as though the seat already belonged to him. "You are late," his uncle said, voice cold with false authority. Ethan pulled out a chair, but did not sit. "I was at the hospital." His uncle scoffed. "Of course you were. Playing husband to a woman who cannot respond while this company collapses around you." Ethan's jaw tightened. "This company is not collapsing. It is being sabotaged, and you know exactly how." Several board members shifted uncomfortably. They did not know the full story yet, but they sensed the tension. His uncle lifted a hand dramatically. "We are here to vote on whether Ethan Hale remains fit to act as chief executive officer. His decision-making has become erratic. He entered into a suspicious marriage that jeopardizes the company's reputation, and he has spent more time at a hospital than in this office during a crisis." Ethan leaned forward. "Do not pretend this is about the company. This is about the will. You want control back because grandfather did not choose you. He did not trust you." His uncle's expression barely moved, but his eyes flashed. "Enough. I move to strip Ethan Hale of authority pending a full investigation." Before the attorney could begin the procedural reading, Ethan spoke again, louder this time. "Before you vote, there is something you need to see." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were the hospital security still images. His uncle's assistant tampering with Lila's medical equipment. His uncle speaking with him in the parking garage. A wave of unease rolled across the room. "What is this?" one board member asked, voice cracking. "This is attempted medical interference," Ethan said, steady and unshaken. "It endangered the life of the woman my grandfather entrusted me to protect. And the man responsible is the assistant of the person sitting at the head of this table." Eyes turned toward his uncle. His uncle bristled. "This is absurd. Fabricated. Desperate." Ethan did not blink. "I have the original footage. I have the badge records. And, if necessary, I will take this to law enforcement and the press. So before you vote on my suitability as chief executive officer, perhaps you should consider what this company looks like when the public learns that a member of this board is connected to an attempted assault on a comatose woman. The silence that followed was absolute. His uncle's composure splintered, the perfect veneer cracking under the pressure. This is not over, he hissed quietly. For you? It is, Ethan replied. The attorney cleared his throat. The motion to strip Ethan Hale of authority is withdrawn. Effective immediately, an internal investigation will begin into the conduct of Mr. Hale Sr. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had won the meeting, but victory tasted bitter. He did not want power for power's sake. He wanted safety. He wanted answers. He wanted to be back at the hospital, and he needed to return fast. He rushed out of the building, drove through the evening traffic, and reached St. Augustine Hospital just as the sky deepened to a violet glow. The hallways hummed with night shift energy, dimmest lights casting long shadows. When he entered Lila's room, he froze. She was different. Her breathing still steady, her body still calm, but her face seemed less pale, her eyebrows softening in a way that hinted at returning awareness. And her hand, that same hand that had moved earlier, now rested closer to the bracelet he had left for her. Ethan stepped to her bedside and lowered himself into the chair, his voice a soft tremble. I kept my promise. I came back. Her eyelashes quivered. Ethan leaned forward, pulse thundering in his ears. Lila, he whispered, if you can hear me, if you are trying to come back, you are not alone. I am here. A tiny sound escaped her throat, barely audible, almost like the faintest sigh. Ethan shot to his feet, heart racing. Lila, do it again. Please. Her head shifted a fraction of an inch on the pillow. A tear slid down Ethan's cheek before he even realized he was crying. He brushed it away quickly, his voice cracking. You are fighting. I knew you were. As he reached for her hand, her fingers twitched again, slow but deliberate, curling weakly toward his touch. Ethan caught her hand gently in both of his voice shaking with wonder. Lila, you are waking up. Outside the window, the city continued to move, unaware of the small miracle happening in a quiet hospital room. But for Ethan, the world narrowed down to this moment, this girl, and the fragile hope that their story was about to change forever. For several hours after that first faint sound escaped Lila's throat, Ethan did not move from her bedside. He kept his hands wrapped gently around hers, afraid that if he let go, the fragile progress she was making might slip away. The room had grown dim, the late evening sky casting a soft blue glow through the blinds, and every quiet shift in her breathing made Ethan's heart leap with a new surge of hope. Dr. Myers entered with a small team of nurses, their steps quiet but urgent. We received the alert from her monitor, the doctor said, already pulling on gloves. Show me exactly what happened. Ethan stepped back without letting go of Lila's hand. She made a sound, and her head moved. And her fingers, they curled toward mine. Dr. Myers leaned over her, shining a small penlight near her eyes. Lila, if you can hear me, try to respond. Can you squeeze your hand? For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, with painstaking slowness, her fingers tightened, barely there, fragile as a whisper, but unmistakably intentional. One of the nurses gasped softly. Dr. Myers straightened, eyes brightening behind his glasses. This is significant. Very significant. She is transitioning out of the deeper stage of coma. Ethan felt the world tilt, but this time in a way that brought relief instead of fear. She is waking up? Not fully, the doctor said gently. But she is coming back to us. What she needs now is stability, calm, and consistency. He glanced at the nurses. Prepare for updated neurological tests, and keep the sedation at 0. I want her natural responses to guide us from here. As the team moved around her, adjusting wires and updating charts, Ethan remained steady at her side. He spoke in a soft voice, not wanting to interrupt their work. Lila, I do not know if you understand what is happening, but you are safe. You are not alone. I am not going anywhere. Her eyelashes trembled again. His breath caught. There, he whispered, do you hear me? The doctor eventually placed a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. She will need rest before we try anything else. There is only so much the brain can do at once. Keep talking to her. Familiar sound helps. When the room finally quieted and the medical team stepped out, Ethan sat again, studying every small detail of her face. Her color was better now, a little warmer than before. Her chest rose and fell in a smoother rhythm. She looked less like someone trapped in stillness and more like someone trying to return. Ethan spoke softly, every word chosen with care. Your social worker told me you worked 3 jobs. That you saved every dollar for that art studio. You survived so much already. So surviving this, I know you can do it. He paused, laughing under his breath at how ridiculous he probably sounded to anyone else. You do not even know me, and I barely knew you before all this. But I am starting to feel like you have been part of my life longer than I realized. He did not say the rest out loud. The part about how her sketchbook had broken his heart or how her bracelet felt like a message she had never had the chance to speak. Instead, he brushed his thumb gently over her knuckles. If you wake up, I will tell you everything. How my grandfather talked about kindness like it was oxygen. How he saw something in you worth protecting. How I think he believed you and I could help each other. The hall lights flickered, a reminder that it was already deep into the night. Ethan stood to stretch his legs. He walked to the window, stared at the city lights for only a second, and then turned back to her. He could not leave. Not tonight. Not now. As he approached the bed again, he noticed a new motion, a slow attempt from her lips to part. It was not a full movement, but it was purposeful. Ethan leaned in, all caution evaporating as he whispered, Lila, try again. I am right here. Her mouth shifted once more, as though she was trying to form a word buried under weeks of silence. The sound that escaped was soft, raw, barely a breath. But Ethan heard it. His heart slammed against his ribs. Lila, was that my name? Her brow creased slightly, another sign of emerging consciousness. The sound came again, fragile but real. Ethan grabbed the call button with shaking hands. Doctor, get back in here. She is trying to speak. The monitor's rhythm quickened, reflecting the surge of activity in her mind. Nurses rushed in, followed by Dr. Myers, who immediately moved to her side. Lila, stay with us, he urged. Ethan stepped back just enough to give them space, but never removed his eyes from her. And then, with the smallest push of strength she had shown yet, her eyelids fluttered, slowly, painfully, but unmistakably, beginning to open. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that feels like the world holding its breath. Ethan whispered, voice breaking as hope flooded him fully for the first time. Lila, come back to us. The moment Lila's eyelids fluttered open, the entire room seemed to freeze. It was not dramatic or sudden, not the kind of awakening you see in movies. It was slow, delicate, as if her mind was lifting itself cautiously from the depths where it had been trapped for weeks. Her lashes trembled once, twice, and then her eyes opened just a small fraction, revealing unfocused glimpses of the world returning to her. Dr. Myers leaned in immediately, his voice steady but gentle. Lila, can you hear me? If you can, blink once for yes. Ethan stood on the opposite side of the bed, gripping the rail with both hands to stop them from shaking. He held his breath. For a few long seconds, she did not blink at all. Her gaze drifted slowly across the blurry shapes in front of her, her face slack with exhaustion. Then, with visible effort, she blinked once. A nurse gasped. Ethan pressed a hand over his mouth, overwhelmed. Dr. Myers nodded quickly. Good. Very good. Lila, I need you to try something else. Can you follow my voice? Her eyes shifted, tiny and uncertain, but they moved in his direction. Ethan felt his knees weaken. She was understanding. She was there. The doctor continued giving soft instructions, checking her ability to track movement, to breathe independently, to show neurological responses, all while Ethan stood silently, afraid even to speak. It was as though the air would shatter her fragile progress. Eventually, Dr. Myers stepped back, his face glowing with cautious hope. She is in the early stages of emerging consciousness. She is not fully awake and she will drift in and out, but this is a very strong sign. Ethan finally exhaled. Can I talk to her? Yes, the doctor said, lowering his voice, but keep it simple. She will not process much, and do not overwhelm her. Ethan nodded and moved closer to her side. He sat gently, as if afraid the chair might make too much noise. Lila, he whispered, I am here. It is Ethan. Her eyes drifted toward the sound. She blinked again, slower this time. Her mouth opened slightly, as if trying to form a word. Nothing came, just a breathy exhale. But Ethan heard the effort in it, the will to reach him. "It is all right," he said softly. "Do not force anything. Just rest. You are safe." Her gaze shifted toward him again, more intentional now, as though she recognized something in the tone of his voice. Then her eyes drifted slowly toward the bracelet he had placed near her hand. Her fingers twitched with determination, inching toward it. Ethan felt his heart crack open. "You remember that," he whispered. "I knew it meant something to you." She studied him for a moment, or rather her eyes stayed on him long enough that he dared to believe she was studying him. Her brows creased slightly, and a soft sound escaped her throat, almost like an attempt to speak. Dr. Myers stepped closer again. She may not be strong enough for verbal communication yet, but she recognizes certain stimuli, and possibly certain people. Ethan swallowed. "Does she recognize me?" "It is possible," the doctor said with a warm but cautious tone. "Familiarity tends to return before memory or speech." Ethan reached out carefully, placing the tip of his finger against her palm. "I am not going anywhere, Lila. You wake up when you are ready. I will be here." Her fingers curled weakly around his, barely applying pressure, but the intention was undeniable. She was reaching for him. Before he could say more, the door swung open sharply. A security guard stepped in, followed by the attorney. Ethan tensed immediately. "What happened?" The guard spoke quickly. "We apprehended your uncle's assistant trying to access a restricted area again. We believe he was attempting to tamper with hospital files related to your wife's case." "And your uncle?" Ethan demanded, jaw clenching. The attorney answered grimly. "He vanished from the company premises an hour ago. We believe he is attempting to flee the state. The investigation is officially in motion. Law enforcement has been notified." Ethan stood, fury and disbelief colliding inside him. He is still trying to hurt her. Even now, Lila's eyes, half open but aware, shifted weakly toward the tension in his voice. The doctor noticed and raised a hand. "Calmness, Ethan. She cannot handle stress yet. She needs steady, peaceful surroundings. You must be her anchor." Ethan forced his breath to slow. He sat again and touched Lila's hand gently, grounding himself, grounding her. "I am sorry," he murmured. "I did not mean to frighten you. I need you to stay with me. You are safe. Your uncle will never touch you again." Her fingers twitched one more time, curling as if answering him. The room softened again, the tension easing. Dr. Myers glanced at the monitors with satisfaction. "She is stabilizing. This is exactly what she needs." Ethan stayed by her side, his voice lowered to a tender whisper. "We are going to get through this. And when you wake up fully, I will tell you everything. I will tell you why my grandfather trusted you, why he chose you, and why I will protect you with everything I have." Her eyes closed slowly, not in unconsciousness, but in rest, as though her mind had given all the strength it could for now. Ethan sat there holding her hand, knowing that the next chapter of their story was about to begin, not with fear, but with truth. For the next several days, Lila drifted gently between awareness and rest, her eyes opening a little longer each time, her fingers curling with more clarity, her breath steadier and more intentional. Ethan never left her side for more than a few hours, sleeping in the chair by her bed, answering company calls in whispers, and turning away every reporter desperate for a headline about the miracle wife. The hospital became its own small universe, a quiet place where the outside world only intruded when absolutely necessary. And then, one morning, as sunlight warmed the room in soft gold, Lila opened her eyes fully. Not for seconds, but for minutes. She blinked, squinting slightly as though the light was too bright, and turned her head, slow and deliberate, toward the warmth she felt beside her. Ethan raised his head instantly. "Lila." Her lips parted with effort. A sound formed, shallow and shaky, but it was a sound shaped with purpose. Ethan." His breath caught. It was not perfect pronunciation, not clear, but it was close enough that emotion surged in his chest with the force of a tidal wave. "I am here," he whispered, leaning forward. "I am right here." She blinked again, taking him in, her gaze softening with recognition, or at least with a familiarity that went deeper than memory. Dr. Myers entered moments later and nearly froze mid-step. "Well," he said softly, "this is a sight worth celebrating." Over the next hour, they tested her responses, confirmed cognitive function, and helped her drink her first few sips of water. Her voice was little more than a whisper, but every sound she made was a victory, a defiant step back into a world that had nearly lost her. When the room finally cleared and she rested again, Ethan sat close, watching her eyes follow the bracelet on her wrist. He had placed it there the night before. "You kept this," she murmured, her voice raspy. "Yes," he said, smiling softly. "I kept everything that mattered to you." She stared at him for a long moment, gathering strength. "You stayed?" Ethan nodded. "Every day." She swallowed with difficulty. "Why?" He exhaled slowly, choosing honesty over comfort. "Because I promised your light would not go out. Because my grandfather trusted you, believed in you. And because somewhere in all of this, I realized I wanted to protect you for reasons that have nothing to do with a will." Her brow creased gently, confusion and wonder mixing in her gaze. "A will?" Ethan froze, realizing she did not know any of it. What happened next would define everything between them. So he told her, slowly, carefully, with full truth. He told her about his grandfather's dying wish, the unusual marriage clause, the attempt on her life, and the fight that followed. He told her about the sketchbook, the bracelet, the community center, and the day she had moved her hand toward his without even knowing it. When he finished, her eyes glistened, not with fear, not with anger, but with something softer, something tender. "You protected me," she whispered, "even when you did not have to." Ethan nodded. "I did, and I will, no matter what you choose about this marriage. You owe me nothing, Lila. You never did." She took a breath, steady but fragile. "May I see the contract?" Ethan reached into his bag and handed her the envelope. Inside was the marriage agreement, crisp and cold, the document that had begun everything between them. Her thumb brushed the signature line, the one she never had the chance to sign. "Do you want this marriage to stay?" she asked softly. Ethan met her gaze with absolute truth. "Only if you choose it. I will tear it apart right now if that is what you want." She studied the pages for a long moment, and then closed the envelope slowly, her trembling hands returning it to him. "I do not want you to tear it. I want something else." Ethan leaned in. "Tell me." She looked into his eyes with a steadiness that made his heart stutter. "I want a new agreement. One we both sign. One without conditions, without pressure. One that begins with choice, not obligation." Ethan's breath left him in a quiet laugh of disbelief and relief as he reached into his pocket and gently pulled out a replacement, an unmarked envelope he had been carrying for days without knowing why. Inside was a simple sheet of paper and a pen. "Then let us write a new one," he whispered. "You and me. For the future we choose." Lila nodded, her voice firm despite its softness. "For the future we choose." Weeks later, after her strength returned and her steps no longer trembled, Ethan brought her to a small art studio filled with warm light, blank canvases, and shelves of fresh supplies. "This was supposed to be your dream," he said, handing her the key. "Now it is real." She touched the key like it was sacred, tears gathering in her eyes. "Thank you." Ethan took both of her hands gently. "Lila, will you build a life with me? Not because of a will, not because of a contract, but because this time we both want it." She smiled, the first full, bright smile he had ever seen from her, and whispered, "Yes." And as they stood inside the studio built from hope, survival, and second chances, the past finally loosened its grip, letting a new beginning take its place.